This is Technically Legal, a podcast about legal technology and innovation in the legal industry. I'm Chad Main, the founder of legal services company Percipient, and on today's show, I'm in conversation with law practice management consultant and design thinker Katherine Porter. She's the founder of the Resourceful Lawyer. On today's episode, I have a conversation with Katherine Porter. We talk about her journey from practicing law to founding her own company, the Resourceful Lawyer. That's a consultancy that helps lawyers implement legal project management techniques into their legal work. Katherine and I discuss her unique approach to problem solving in the legal field, which involves design thinking and project management principles. During our conversation, Katherine explains the importance of lawyers understanding client needs, the process of workflow mapping, and she also discusses the challenges of implementing new processes in law firms. Katherine also emphasizes that empathy and understanding the client journey is a must when designing effective legal services. And you'll want to stay tuned to the end of the podcast because Katherine offers some real-world tips about where to begin working project management principles into legal practice. So I was messing around your website, get ready for today, and you have a reference there to the Thomas Guide, and that really brought me back because when I got out of law school and was studying for the bar, I moved to LA and I was delivering food, and you got to buy a Thomas Guide and I had never seen anything like that. And for those who don't know what it is, it's this huge spiral-bound book of, I don't know, hundreds of pages, right? And each page of that is just a small portion of the LA metro area. So yeah, that brought back memories. Tell me about the reference and why you included it on your website, other than the fact you said that you're not so great with directions.
Yeah, I could literally get lost coming out of a paper bag. Yeah, it was more that I've always been the resource person, like the one that knows where to go to find the information, and I think as lawyers too, a lot of times it's not just about what we know, it's about being able to find out what we don't know and learn. And so the reference to the Thomas Guide is like just showing, it's just something I've always done is find the right resources to give you the information so you can do what you need to do. So
you were a lawyer before you launched Resourceful Lawyer, your current company. You were a lawyer for 10-ish years, about that, or a little or more?
No more. I graduated from law school in 2000.
Okay, so you launched Resourceful Lawyer about 2017, 2018?
2019.
Yes.
It's been through a few iterations, but yeah.
So almost 20 years. And what drew you to the law in the first place?
Well, this is always a funny story because I didn't really think a lot about being a lawyer.
Yeah.
I was with a friend and she had just finished her first year of law school, and I was a teacher at the time. And I was like, oh, that kind of sounds like fun. So I said, if I take the LSAT and I get a good enough score to go to a good law school, I'll go. So I did, and I did. So I ended up in law school, and it was fun. I mean, that's my ideal job, really, would be someone to pay me to go to school.
That's interesting. You did find it fun. I have a similar story. I was late in my senior year in college, and one of my buddies said, you should go to law school. I said, all right. I'd never literally thought about going until it was probably March. So that is it. I had a good time in law school, too. I really did enjoy it. So you practiced for a long time. You're doing litigation now, and you were doing that before. You launched the Resourceful Lawyer. And one of the main things that the Resourceful Lawyer provides is project management consultation for law firms, right?
Correct.
Twofold question here. Why did you make the jump? And if you want to get in project management, why didn't you try to get an LPM job in a big law firm or go in-house and be a project manager there? What was it about having your own practice and being a consultant that drew you to that?
Well, I made the jump, actually. Like I said, my company business has gone through a couple of iterations, and I was still struggling to get traction. I was doing some freelance legal work, which I still do where I work with other law firms through a platform that coordinates it all. And I ended up working on this case that had over 300 plaintiffs. So it was a mass tort case. And I came on and I just really saw the need for some sort of project management. And I used a tool, ClickUp at the time, and I still use it. And I set it up for them, and I started managing the case. That was the most fun I'd ever had practicing law. So and I think back and I'm like, yeah, I see that trajectory. Like, I've always been interested in how things are done as much as what gets done and how to make it better. So the process improvement, that's always been something I've enjoyed doing. And thinking like strategically and big picture, everything, I've been tracking stuff and just making sure everything's going, according to what we all expected to do and don't miss things. So in other words, I was project managing I just didn't know I was project managing, And then, so everything, when I had that one opportunity, it just sort of came together and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And, I'd already had this company, so I was already in the entrepreneurial space and it just felt really good and I liked it. Kind of addicted to working on my own
Right.
schedule. So I think that, I wouldn't be averse to finding a legal project management job at a law firm, but right now I'm just enjoying having my own business and being my own boss and being able to really help a lot of different people too.
And at that point, if I recall correctly, you had a project management certification, right? Did you have
I
it
do.
at the time, or is it something that came afterwards? You said, hey, I like this stuff. I might as well pursue it.
When I left the firm that I was with for so many years, I actually went to a consulting firm in a related field, and they had a lot of project managers, and they were like saying, "Hey, you should, get your PMP certificate." And I started the program, and it's a long story, but anyway, I ended up leaving that company, so I put it kind of on the back burner. And then when I did this, I was like, okay, I really should go back and get my PMP, finish the coursework. It was nice because they changed the requirements. The test was a little different. And I think it was less about memorization and more about how you would solve problems. So I sat for the exam and I took the PMP certificate of it's been like a little over a year ago or 2 years. I can't remember now, but yeah.
Who are the clients, your clients, so be attorneys, law firms, who are the ones best suited for your work? What's your sweet spot?
I think there's a couple of things that I look for. People that I look for is a lot of times it's either like mass tort where it's a volume type of practice. So either it's a lot of parties, like multiple parties in one matter, or how many ever matters there are. They're complex that way, or it's a high volume practice where the matters are very sequential and very similar. So like lemon law, it kind of all goes through every step is just sort of already, planned out in cases go in a certain order. And those high volume, whether it's complex with multi parties or just one parties, but a lot of them. So I have this lemon law that I've done, and then also an IP practice where she had 200 or 300 marks that she was then. And that one especially, there's a lot of waiting around while you submit the application. And then you just wait. You have to keep checking. So that was a big part of what I was managing, is making sure those check-ins were happening on a regular basis.
Let's talk about the process. So if a law firm or an attorney hires you, what's the workflow? I assume you map what their existing process is and then kind of clean it up, or what are the steps?
Well, the first thing I do is exactly what you said, the workflow mapping, because I think it's really important. And I know they didn't teach that to me in law school. And I know the first time I saw someone doing it, I'm like, wow, this is, I don't know a single lawyer who takes the time to do this, or anyone really that takes the
Right.
time to do this, but it's so, so helpful. And so that's the first step, is to map out workflows.
And how is that done? Well, you sit down with the client and do a graphical, there's symbols and certain, elements to it. It's a graphical thing. But so how do you do that? Is that the end game? Is that you have this graphical visualization of the legal work?
Yeah, well, I think the key thing is, we can make these pretty workflow maps, and I do like doing them visually, either using a cloud-based tool or, post-it notes on a whiteboard with markers is probably even easier. But of course, everything's remote, so the collaboration cloud tools are more versatile that way. But yeah, these pretty maps are wonderful, but no one is going to sit there and be like, oh, we just got served with discovery. Let me go pull up the map
Right.
for that, right? So you have to implement it somehow. And whether that is through a tool like ClickUp or Asana or those other project management tools, you can even do a little bit of it through Clio and Outlook if you want to just really minimize the number of apps you have. So you can find a way to implement it that's helpful, whatever's easier and faster makes sense for the particular client.
How is project management utilized in project management concepts throughout the life cycle of a legal matter?
Well, I think and we're all used to managing our cases, right? And so it's just putting that into the process and implement, so you see what's up. It could look like daily check-ins, or, it really lays out a good workflow map that's implemented in a tool, lays out what you need to do each day. And if you have an outside project manager or someone like me, then I'm also checking to make sure that workflows are balanced, that the drafts are being reviewed if that's a step that needs to get done. and really watching out for bottlenecks and seeing if we need to shift things around or provide more support to the managing attorney or somebody, wherever the bottleneck is, to figure out what we can do to reduce that bottleneck. So you're just kind of always in the weeds and seeing how things are going, where the shortfalls are, and what's working, what's not working. And it's a constant iteration of the approach too.
When we come back, Katherine tells us how she applies design thinking principles to legal practice, and she also tells us about techniques she uses to convince legal teams to work in project management ideas into their workflows. I'm Chad Main, and this is Technically Legal.
This podcast is brought to you by Percipient, a legal services company powered by technology. Percipient helps legal teams tackle legal operations, electronic document review, and process automation. Percipient services include managed document review, subpoena compliance, cyber incident response, and also helps legal teams provide clients with process-driven legal support. To learn more, visit percipient.co. Percipient. Legal services powered by technology.
All right, we'll get back to my conversation with Katherine Porter of the Resourceful Lawyer in just a second. But before we do, like I always do, I want to let you know if you go to tlpodcast.com, there's an episode page for this episode and every other episode we've done. On those pages, you'll find more information about our guests and links to a lot of the stuff we talk about. If you want to get a hold of me, you can email me at cmain@percipient.co. That's C-M-A-I-N at percipient.co, or you can find me on X or LinkedIn. All right, let's get back to my conversation with the Resourceful Lawyer, Katherine Porter. Another service I saw you provide, the application of design thinking to legal practices.
Yes.
So how did you get started in that?
That was a significant other that I was with at the time. And he was talking about it. And I just thought it was just so interesting. And then I actually learned about this book called Designing Your Life. And I went to the workshop, which is all based on design thinking, but it's applied to your own. It's really geared towards finding your career. So I went to a workshop on designing your life for women. And it was I just kept getting all this information. And once once things start coming at you, you just like, oh my gosh, this is such a game changer. And I think the big thing for the practice of law, we are client-centered, right? And I think the days of I'm the lawyer, I'm the expert are long gone. And we don't like to think so, I think, but it is. And so it really helps you turn around and think about your processes and your touch points and in terms of the client and making sure you're meeting their needs. And because I think that a lot of times as lawyers, we think we know what the client wants and needs, but maybe we don't. Maybe they're looking for a different type of outcome.
We should probably take a second to talk about what design thinking is. And you've on your website, and I'll put links to this on the episode page, you've got a kind of looks like 5-step process. It starts with empathy for everyone interacting with the design. There's your human element. You got to define what the problem is. Then you ideate around the way to solve the problem. And then you prototype a possible solution, and then you test the design with users. So, and you mentioned, I think in the same article, you mentioned that design firm out in, I think it's Bay Area, IDEO, and there's a great book about them called The Art of Innovation. But the way they use design thinking, help make a lot of products, but they'll actually talk to people about the potential, like what the product's going to look like. Then they prototype it, and then you go back to these people and they test out and stuff. So that makes sense when it's a product like that. So how do we apply that to law? Because there's no widget, there's no physical item that can be tested like that.
I think we do have clients, we do have humans that we interact with. And so we want to make sure we're understanding their needs, and that's the empathy piece. And so I think you can deliver a service in a way that is more client-centered and really understanding their client journey. They're still interacting with you. There's still different things. I mean, you might have more control over what's being produced, but I think of it as like, I've seen references to this before. It's almost like a theater, and thinking about the service, the partners, maybe they're the face, they're on the stage, right? The client's the audience, they're on the stage, they're doing their thing, but what's happening behind them and in rehearsals and all the technical details that helps them have that positive interaction with the client. So it's not just the clients, but it's also thinking about your staff and support staff, associates, whoever you have, and making sure that they have what they need to do their job right. And again, you might not even think about what they need. It's not, you just assume they know what they're doing, and they should hopefully know what they're doing. So you're thinking about it in terms of everyone, so that includes the people who are helping you deliver that service to the client.
And as part of this, both of this work, the project management, obviously, and as the design thinking, you have another definition that I hadn't really thought through. We always talk about having legal projects, but I never really thought about project having a defined set of characteristics. And you got another article about this on your website too. You say a project is a temporary endeavor with a beginning and an end. It's different from routine business operations. It has its own budget and schedule and team, and it's concluded once the goal is achieved. So when I read that, the thing that stuck out to me is, how is a project under this definition different than a business routine? Because in my mind, if you hire a lawyer to litigate a case for you, represent you in court, you sue somebody, you got the stages, you got filing the complaint, you got discovery, you've got the trial, and then you got the post-trial stuff. So it seems to me that those are routine things that are part of a lawyer's business. But what's the distinction there?
Well, this distinction is that all of like what you've just described, that's one matter. So the project is that matter, and it has a beginning and an end. So with the pieces within it might be routine operations, and that would be where, mapping out your workflows would apply to the subsets. So those might be routines, but overall the project is the case or the matter, the transaction. And when the deal closes or the trial's over and the appeals are over, whatever, then that's done. And so you can have tasks and routines within that, but the actual matter is the project because it has the beginning and the end. Routines means like sending out invoices every month. That's
so the true business stuff, the back office business stuff.
Exactly.
You're drawing a distinction there. Yeah. So these are concepts, as you've already alluded to, that you don't just get your case in the door and map out what you're going to do in a cool graphic document. So what have you found that works to get lawyers to start thinking this way and change how they do their work and to implement these processes?
That's always a tough one. There's always the resistance. I have a nice position because if they're coming to me, they're already,
right,
like they're already pre-qualified, so to speak, right, to think that way. But that doesn't mean that all their coworkers are on board with it, right? I think every profession thinks their profession is the most resistant to change. But I don't know. I think a lot of people in general are just resistant to change. And I think the one of the key things is to invite them into the process and get people involved in the workflow mapping. One of the other key elements to handling the resistance is really anchoring it and solving a particular problem. What's keeping you up at night? What's really not working for you? Let's figure out a way to solve that particular problem. And then they see, okay, this is helping that. And it's, anchoring it in those pain points at first is really helpful. I think it helps people see the value really quickly. And, start small and then kind of grow. And eventually people will generally see the benefit. I know this one of the clients I had, it was one of the partners. He wasn't resistant to it necessarily, but he was we use this, system, this platform, and he was always afraid to go in there because he thought he was going to break it. And I was like, you can't break it. I can restore pretty much anything you do as the admin, but we did some workarounds for him to kind of drawing on my teacher background, we call that scaffolding, right? When you present a new concept to a classroom with kids, you provide the structure underneath it to help them get to the whatever goal you want them, whatever you really want them to learn. But you might need to scaffold it at first to help them get there, provide that structure. So it's the same thing. I don't care if you're teaching 40-year-olds or 4-year-olds. It's still, some of them need that extra support to get fully comfortable with the concepts. And then eventually, hopefully you can, mixing my metaphors here, you can take the training wheels off and hopefully they're there.
So as I close out episodes, a lot of times I like to ask practical questions. And so my question to you is, and you've already kind of started to answer it, is if you got a lawyer starting to think about how to streamline their processes, how to improve their processes, how to think about this design thinking, what's the first step? What is a concrete thing that a lawyer or any legal professional or a paralegal or the support staff, they can do to start thinking about how to change the processes within their organization?
Well, like you said, I talked about mapping, and I think mapping processes is good. I also think, especially for lawyers and service professionals, I feel like having an understanding of the client journey, can be another map, client journey mapping, and that's the empathy part of design thinking. And so I think that's really the place to start, whether you're doing a project management, workflow map or customer journey mapping, you start with the people involved and figure out what do they need? What are the sticking points and how can I address those? And so, with workflow mapping, I always advise thinking about those things that you're constantly getting the same questions over and over and over about, and are things that are just, causing you the interruptions to your day, and how can you reduce that? And, the one thing with design thinking and human-centered design is it's focused on defining the problem. It's more important to do problem finding than problem solving. So making sure you're really hitting the needs, that you're understanding and defining that need correctly. I always like the example of a chair. If you tell people, okay, design a chair, again, that's a physical product, but it translates to service, but you're going to get a bunch of chairs. But if you say, design a device or a piece of furniture that will allow me to take the weight off of my legs and, rest or something. And then, you might get a hammock.
Because that's the problem, right? That's the
Right.
purpose of the problem is I'm tired, I want to sit down.
Yeah, exactly. I'm tired, I want to sit down. Yeah. And so, that could get you a hammock. That could get you a stool. That could get you a couch. It's not just going to get you chairs, right? So I think that's how defining the problem makes such an impact.
Well, Katherine, I appreciate your time today. If people want to get a hold of you, learn more about your practice, where do you want to send them?
Yeah, the best way if you want to contact me is Katherine@resourcefullawyer.com. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, and it's K Porter JD is my username. There are a few Katherine Porters out there in the world. So.
Add the JD. Add the
Yeah.
JD.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Katherine. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great.
Okay, that's a wrap for today's episode. As always, we really appreciate you listening. If you want to subscribe, you can find us on most major podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, etc. Also, if you like us enough, I hope you leave us a favorable review. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, this has been Technically Legal.